This power-hungry cabal of billionaires and politicians has long plotted to enslave the masses, and now they're making their move. And they are determined to continue pulling the wool over your eyes. The World Economic Forum recently announced that it has recruited hundreds of thousands of information warriors to control the internet and police social media and forums for misinformation and conspiracy content which they will then shut down. According to Klaus Schwab's WEF, misinformation on the internet is an infodemic that is potentially deadly and requires a cure. The definition of misinformation, according to the WEF, is anything they disagree with. This means the information warriors will essentially be engaged in the act of shutting down dissent. Conspiracy forums and YouTube comment sections are being targeted by so-called digital first responders who pretend to be ordinary users of the platform but are actually working to disrupt proceedings and support the ideology of Klaus Schwab's WEF. Announcing the news on a WEF podcast, UN Communications Director Melissa Fleming said,
"So far we've recruited 110,000 information volunteers. And we equip these information volunteers with the kind of knowledge about how misinformation spreads and ask them to serve as kind of digital first responders in those spaces where misinformation travels."
The WEF are subliminally influencing the masses in order to push their narratives onto the people. Also on the podcast, mainstream journalist Mark Little set out potential solutions to the so-called infodemic. Little has worked for Twitter and he founded Storyful, a social media news agency closely linked to the fact-checking program. He has now launched Kinzen, a company which is threatening to use artificial intelligence to censor online content on behalf of the elites.
I've started to see very much the spread of misinformation as a global health crisis, because only when we think about misinformation in the same way we think about the spread of the coronavirus in a similar way, that misinformation is that serious a threat to our society. Misinformation now is happening within our friends and families. So we have to find strategies to, first of all, recognize it. And secondly, as active citizens, just like we wear masks to protect others, we need to be the good citizen, the active vector fighting back in our daily lives.
The World Economic Forum is not the only globalist organisation setting its sights on controlling the narrative on social media by unleashing hundreds of thousands of information warriors. Google's Jigsaw unit sponsors a RAND report that recommends infiltrating and subverting online conspiracy forums from within. According to the report, the best way to subvert conspiracy forums is by planting authoritative messaging wherever possible. So what is authoritative messaging? If you've spent any time on forums lately, you might have noticed that when an interesting or explosive topic is created, the thread is immediately swarmed by users leaving messages disparaging the original post, picking it apart and basically finding any possible way to cast doubt on its legitimacy. This type of behaviour is an example of authoritative messaging and is performed by users who are engaging on behalf of the World Economic Forum or Google's Jigsaw unit. The report states that if authoritative messaging in the conspiracy forum is successful, so-called moderate conspiracy theorists will flip to become influencers and help guide the flock to greener pastures as brand ambassadors for the common good, teaching others the errors of their ways. The Google report goes on to claim that conspiracy forum members will eventually be persuaded by the bombardment of content flagged by algorithms, and they will slowly come around to believing that mainstream media and the fact-checkers are right by the sheer volume of evidence and or peer pressure to conform. Judging by the content of this report, it's clear the elites don't have any respect for the intelligence and persistence of the average so-called conspiracy theorists. This is where they are getting it wrong. The average user of conspiracy forums in 2023 has already proven themselves by rejecting the all-encompassing fake news mainstream media, despite an endless barrage of propaganda and predictive programming. These are people who understand that all the world's a stage. These are people who are already battle-hardened. Trying to infiltrate conspiracy forums and social media and subvert certain members seems like a tactic that will be perceived as an intrusion that furthers the divide and leads to even less trust. Having said that, it's important we understand the nature of the information war being waged by the powers that be. We are part of something so huge right now. The elites would not be targeting conspiracy forums on social media in 2023 if these forums were not the last places on earth where truth is being discovered and lies are being exposed. We have the potential to break the chains of the past, the control, division, hatred and separation. We are literally creating a new world. That's why the control apparatus is so afraid. They know that they can't stop this. The more they lie, the more they deceive, the more they expose themselves, and the closer they are to losing control. Will you join us in the fight for freedom, or will you cower in fear and submit to the demands of the global elite? The choice is yours, but whatever you do, do not underestimate the consequences of your choices. Please like and subscribe to this channel so we can continue sharing the news that the mainstream don't dare to touch.